We need to talk about Lionel Shriver. I need to talk about Lionel Shriver. Over the past week, I have read Big Brother by Lionel Shriver. Now, this is an interesting book. This is the second book I've read by Lionel Shriver. Lionel, if you don't know, is a woman. She's an American writer who spends time and lives in London or somewhere in England, as well as in Brooklyn, here in New York City. I read Should We Stay or Should We Go a couple of years ago when it was brand new. Now, that one was really terrific and it's meant a lot to me, actually, because it is about a couple of old people who, at age 80, have made a pact. Well, they made a pact 30 years old, 30 years previous, when they were like 50, that when they were 80, they would take the Seconal that they have in the refrigerator and end their lives, rather than go through the debilitating pain and horror and who knows what that can go on at the end of life with Alzheimer's disease, with various debilities and all that. So that's the setup for the novel. Both of these people are medical professionals in England. They work for the National Medical, the medical health, the socialized medicine, the medical system in England. And they've been working there and they've seen what goes on. He's a doctor, she's a nurse. They've seen what goes on with some of these old people, and it's not pretty. So they, and the woman is just, by the time it is at some point in the novel, as I said, I read it a couple years ago, the woman's father dies in this horrible way of Alzheimer's, and he doesn't know anyone. He's, really bitchy, yells at everybody, his family, even though he doesn't know who they are, treats them like servants, is, out of his mind, takes his clothes off, does all these things, are the worst of these of the Alzheimer's people, and it's a bad scene. So she goes along with this idea of her husband that, in 30 years on, they are going to take these pills and pass quietly without being a burden on the healthcare system, on the National Health Services, on their relatives, on themselves, getting themselves in a precarious position where they can't get out. Like if you, have some sort of a stroke and you're kind of half here and half there, and you can't, at that point, end your own life. You're caught in the bind of supporting the medical industry with your insurance or whatever. So they decide to do this in the first part of the novel. Then the second part of the novel goes to 30 years later, when it's 2021, actually, during the pandemic. And it goes through, Lionel Shriver takes us through various scenarios of what could happen then. If they do it, if one of them wants to do it and the other doesn't, if somehow one of them rats out to the children and the children find out and then call in the authorities to protect them, and then they get sent to a hellhole sort of medical prison for insane people that watch over them all the time, suicide watch, all that. So she goes through all these different scenarios of what could happen. One of them is a cybernetics thing where they get frozen and come back, way in the future. Well, that's kind of amusing. So Lionel Shriver is a very bright, very entertaining, very amusing writer, and but deals with hard issues that a lot of us face or are going to end up facing in this amusing, clever, creative way, and facing them head on. Not that many people are writing novels that are that strong and that courageous about these kind of issues as Lionel Shriver does. So, Big Brother is an earlier novel of hers. I know that there's an origin of this that's quite close to her personally because her brother actually did get big and had problems with weight. She has explained this, I think, in an essay. Maybe I've read one of her essay books. Came out last year. Perhaps she talked about that in the one of the essays, but somewhere I read an interview or something where she talks about the origins of Big Brother and how she, how, and there's a lot of pain in these pages and a lot of contemplation. It's really a novel of contemplating what to do. What the setup is that she's a married woman who's living in Iowa. Well, it's first person. It's written in first person from this point of view of a woman who is 40 years old, living in Iowa, the daughter of a TV star, 80s TV star, sitcom star who's long faded. And she moves out there. She has a catering business, and from that she pivots into a talking doll business. She comes up with all these funny, really good things. She has a business that makes dolls that look a lot like the people, and you order a doll that looks like a person you're ordering it for, and you send them sayings that the person would say, the cliches that the person would say, like if you have somebody in your home that it's to make fun. It's a teasing, sort of actually kind of cruel little Chatty Cathy toy. I don't know if anybody of you remember. Chatty Cathy was a pull string toy. You pull the string, it had a recording inside, and it would say, "Feed me," "Love me, mommy," or whatever it said. Chatty Cathy. So these toys have all these things that people send in and suggestions and what they want on the recordings of like 20 little sayings that you pull the string and the person says these things. So it's just a kind of clever idea of this teasing toy. So she makes a big successful business out of this. Iowa has a factory. She gets written up in New York Magazine. Picture on the cover. She doesn't really like this kind of attention. It's a little too much. So into this scene from New York City comes her older brother, who left home at age 17 from L.A. once again with the TV star father, and he has been living in New York for years, and she finds out, I don't remember how that all worked out, but she finds out that he's, kind of in trouble and staying with a friend. But he's a pianist. He's a jazz pianist. So he's comes up with he tells her of all his big plans and all these people he played with, all these luminaries of the jazz world that he played with. He inflates himself into this much more of a figure than it turns out he actually was. But so in the circumstances, he comes out to she flies him out to Idaho to visit the family, and he has an extended stay. He stays for 2 months with her husband, herself, and her 2 adopted children, who are the husband's actual the father is her husband of these 2 children that she adopts, a boy and a girl. The mother, since it's Iowa, has become a crack addict or a meth addict, and so he dumped his wife and ultimately got involved with Pandora is the name of the character. So Pandora's brother, Edison, comes out to stay with them, and he gets picked up at the airport. And when she sees him at the airport, she's like freaked out. He comes, he's the last one off the plane, and he comes in on a wheelchair, enormously fat. I mean, almost 400 pounds is kind of the number that gets tossed around later in the novel, but extremely obese. So the emotional impact of this novel, the questions here are really, what do you do? How far do you commit to a sibling? As opposed to how you commit to your family. The husband does not like the brother right off. The brother comes in, he's a smoker, he's a loudmouth, a braggart about, he has all this arcane hipster language like man and cats. Oh, those cats really blow really good, and all this kind of talk. And this is contemporary, so it's the jazz scene in New York like now, which is kind of like it's kind of passe, other than Wyndham Marsalis at the Rose Center or whatever in Time Life building. But of course he does not like Wyndham because he's not pure enough and so forth. And so what goes on is there's a real conflict with the family, and all this stuff about his being fat. The husband is a real control freak with his food, like is very pure and kind of bugs the family with his purity all the time. So she contemplates in this novel, how far do you go to save your brother, a sibling? And in this position, what do you do with a loved one, a family member who is an addict? And how far do you go to help? And can you help? And if you're going to help, is it going to hurt yourself and your family? And will you sacrifice yourself for this other? So the second half of the book is all about helping the brother. She determines to go all out in helping the brother. So we then, through the part of the this whole part of the novel, from the 386, he has a target weight of 160. 63 or whatever he was, back in the day when he was a track star, when she knew him when she was a young kid, and he took off to be a jazz star in New York City. So that's the target position, and we go through the novel and we hear all this story about them working on this problem together. And I'm not going to give any of it away because it is rather surprising. It's quite surprising at the end, and it is a contemplation about overeating, about addiction. Now, in this one, it's not a genetic hormone deal. The brother got fat because he was sad and depressed, and used food to stuff his feelings. So we have to go on it from there. It's not it's not as though he can't help it. This is not a fat pride book, and any people in the fat pride. I'm not sure how people who feel like that. I mean, obviously I'm not fat. So, and have no problem with staying like really thin myself, like I weigh like 135. So, this is not really my world. I've known some fat people. But one thing about this is that And what many of us can relate to is that many of us do have addicts in our lives or have been addicts at one time or another. Now, this personally, my brother was alcoholic. My younger brother, and 11 months ago, actually died as a result of complications of his alcoholism. So this is a contemplation of a person who goes, gee, and kind of what I've done some of the time myself. I've thought, well, could I have done something to help him? Actually, about 5 years ago, his wife, that was soon to be his ex-wife, wanted me to do that, wanted me to do something very similar to what goes on in Big Brother, or what is part of what goes on in Big Brother. She was going to give me $5,000 to get an apartment with my girlfriend and my brother, move him from California, presumably to New York, and then I would take care of my brother, take him off her hands, and ultimately I said, no, I cannot do that. I'm not going to change my life like that and go that far in some kind of a crazy scheme of saving my brother from his alcohol. He was actually in jail at the time for the third DWI. Ultimately, I didn't, but he did sober up. He ended up going out to Evansville, Indiana, where he was working in Evansville, Indiana, far from anyone who knew him. He had split with his wife, and he was working at a lucrative job. He had a computer skill that offered him work that, while he was together enough to do it. So he got this lucrative job with this loan shark company actually out there. And he lived all by himself with no one he knew in this little town in Indiana for like 3 years. Well, a little bit more than that, because now he's been dead an entire year. But it all came kind of crashing down for him due to the pandemic, because he started working at home and didn't see anyone. He was in this weird apartment complex out in the middle of this prairie where, you had to drive everywhere. You couldn't, walk down to the store. A New Yorker doesn't understand these things. But so he got very lonely and very isolated. He was a kind of person that needed a lot of love and support. And, and I have to look at myself and see that, well, as a big brother, I really wasn't all I could have been for him. And so, this kind of novel is just right for me right now, because it looks at these kind of issues of, what do you do with an addict, a sibling? How far do you go? I was not, and my brother was also sort of involved with music, with big time musicians in a pay for play kind of way, in that he had a session with very high powered, famous, studio musicians out in LA, people who have been referred to as the Wrecking Crew. So he, I have these recordings. I could put a link in the description of the memorial video I made for him, which shows him in these recording sessions a few years back, with these really great studio musicians, and that was, kind of the high point of his life. He sang on those, never released them, but and alienated all these people with his alcoholism. So very much it parallels the story in Big Brother in a lot of ways, except that, he didn't come out to live with me. I went out to see him December of 21. He slipped on ice and cracked his head very badly, but didn't get treated. He went to the hospital and, had a really bad concussion and all this stuff, but didn't get treated properly and stayed in his apartment and was calling everyone that he knew around the country, and went into decline and ended up getting discovered in his apartment. I went out and saw him February last year, in the middle of February. I was on my way to Mexico. I thought I was changing my life by moving to Mexico, sort of retiring from working here in New York City. And so, but when I left him, he was still living, but like a day after I got to Mexico, he ended up dying. So could I have saved my brother? Probably not. Could I have extended his life in some way by staying there after this accident? I think he was kind of a goner after this accident, because he had hurt his head so badly, and he couldn't walk. And his liver was shot from cirrhosis. He was going to have to go on dialysis, all this stuff. So he was going to be in, some kind of a facility the rest of his life, but ended up dying at 64. So, I don't mean to go into this all sad story. You don't have to say, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, things like that. And it's been some months now. But Lionel Shriver, this is the kind of novel that this is, and it goes into these kind of questions really well, and because it's written by someone who had a brother who had a problem, and she couldn't fix it, and her real brother did die. He was a sound he was a guy that went on tours and did the board, the sound for big tours and stuff like that in real life. So she extrapolated, turned that into the brother being a jazz musician himself in the book, changing various things. And I'm going to continue to read Lionel Shriver novels, that's for sure, because she's just really, really fun, smart. Her most famous novel is, as the title of this, we need to talk about Lionel Shriver. Her most famous novel is We Need to Talk About Kevin, which about the mother of a school shooter, which I have not read. I actually heard a extended BBC radio drama of that book. Did I see the movie? I don't think I did see the movie with Tilda Swinton, whatever her name is. So I will want to read that one sometime in the future, because Lionel Shriver is just so cool. She's one of my favorites. I even like her photo, and she looked cool. So, Big Brother, really good novel, especially if you're interested in addiction, family connection, marriage, commitment, codependency, Al-Anon, whatever. It has elements of all that stuff in it. And Lionel Shriver is good with me, and I'm glad that I got to talk about her and read this great new novel. So I haven't said this yet, but like and subscribe. We all have to say like and subscribe. I'm not getting very many subscribers, but it could be that I'm not very much fun or interesting. So Anyway, thanks for watching.